What was that?
I don't think too many people said no to Frank in Vegas.
I don't know. Frank was great to me. I heard all
bosses at the hotel. I think whatever Frank wanted, he pretty much got, right?
Well, maybe that's so, but the sense that I had of this man was very different than the sense that a lot of other people had. And often when I have this conversation with people, especially people in the business that knew him,
Right.
I just had a very different experience with him. It was extremely different. I mean, he was buddy-buddy with my dad. They were very good friends. I mean, for the time that I was there, and they got along very, very well. And Frank was great to me. I remember he was concerned that I was doing my homework and that I ate dinner. And it was like, having a sweet Italian uncle.
That's right. I had a chance to interview Frank Jr., who played down here a couple of years ago, and he told some great stories. And Sid Mark, I don't know if you ever met Sid Mark. He does that Sound of Sinatra radio show. He told some great stories about...
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, I'd love to hear that show.
And Frank was big on loyalty, and if he was your friend, he really looked after you, didn't he?
Well, that was the sense that I got, and he loved good musicians.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a real place in his heart for somebody who was consummate at what they do, and people who were really, really interested in excellence. And, he really, really, he had a true place in his heart for those people who were, the creative beings. And he really, really, I mean, he treated me like family. I can't say enough nice things. I mean, I don't relate. It's so funny because I know everybody can't be crazy. I mean, I know he might have had another side to him, or maybe maybe when you're that big too. In all fairness to Frank, when you become that big, everybody seems to want a piece of you. And maybe you have to be protective of yourself, or you can destroy yourself. And maybe with a kid, he didn't have that. I was just looking to learn my craft and do my work.
So he was so big, he almost had to put a shell around himself, or else you would go nuts, wouldn't you, at that point?
But I noticed that, don't forget, I've worked with everybody.
Sure.
God bless. I mean, I've worked with everybody. And I noticed that with a lot of people, that they do become a bit closed off. And they have to. They have to. It's a form of self-protection.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so big, and it's so wide open, and it's frightening. Imagine leaving your house, and no matter where you go, fingers are pointing at you, and people are coming up, people you've never met, they're coming up to talking to you, they're preventing you from maybe picking up your kid from school, or whatever, whatever you need to do during your day, or whatever. Whatever it is, it's odd. It's an odd place to be, where no matter where you go in the world, you don't have any privacy.
You also had this. I mean, you've been on television pretty much your whole life, and people know you because they think they know you because you're coming into their living rooms, but you've never seen them before, but they can come up to you because they think they know you, right?
But I've had it in a very manageable way.
Mm-hmm.
I've been fortunate in my career where I've always worked, and people know who I am, but it's not on the scale of a Frank Sinatra or Judy Garland or, that kind of thing, where there isn't any place in the world where these people could have gone where they would have had any privacy.
Mm.
My career was very manageable, and it still remains so, and I'm very grateful to that because, in a way, I've had a better life. Because I've been able to enjoy the music, I've been able to perform at the most world-prestigious venues with the grandest people on the planet, and yet I could still go home and have a private life.
Right.
And I think I've really been lucky enough to have the best of both worlds, where I don't think a lot of these people who have attained, out-of-sight stardom, I wonder if Celine Dion could go to the coffee shop and have a tuna fish sandwich with her husband.
Right.
And you give up a lot. And I know people that are listening to this say, oh, knock it off, Julie. The perks are greater than the things, that are in the minus column. But, unless you're living that life and you're around those people, you really don't see, how they're left open and very, very vulnerable.
Sure.
It changes things. It really does change things.
Talking with Julie Budd, and Julie, you're going to be coming down to Florida coming up in February on the 6th, not too far away from here, at the Lyric Theater. Talk about that concert, if you would.
I am so excited. You know how I love John Lesser, and I love the Lyric Theater, and I love what they stand for. I mean, first of all, they've been so kind. Every other year I've, like clockwork, been there and brought a different show. Last year it was Gershwin. And this year I'm bringing my Dorothy Fields show. And, you know, Dorothy Fields was a great, great lyricist. She wrote with Jerome Kern and the Gershwin Boys and Arthur Schwartz and Jimmy McHugh. And she wrote I'm in the Mood for Love and The Way You Look Tonight and Sunny Side of the Street and the entire score of Sweet Charity was written with her and Cy Coleman and Seesaw, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I Can't Give You Anything But Love, all these great songs. And so many times when I mention Dorothy Fields, people say, oh, it's Dorothy Fields. And then when I start mentioning her songs and singing her songs, you know, they say, oh my God, that's Dorothy Fields? She's written everything. And I go, yes, she actually has. And she paved the way for all of these, you know, ladies like Laura Nyro and Carole King and, you know, Carolyn Lee and all of these people, for them to come along. She was like the first lady lyricist who really wrote with the boys.
I can't really think of any other women composers or lyricists from that era. So
not at that time.
Yeah.
She was the first heavyweight, real notable person. And she wrote from 1928 up until the time of her death in 1974. And she had hits, one after the other. She wrote Yesterdays and I Won't Dance and A Fine Romance. And she wrote all of those beautiful songs with Jerome Kern for Roberta. And she wrote all those songs in Swing Time. And like I said, Sweet Charity was a huge score. You know, that was just on Broadway a year and a half.
Not too long ago, right?
That's right, and they're always, you know, playing it somewhere. And she wrote the book. Actually, she was supposed to write the score with Jerome Kern to Annie Get You Done. And what happened is Jerome Kern had died just before they started work on it. And, of course, everybody knows Irving Berlin did it, but she and her brother Herbert wound up writing the book.
Really?
And, yeah, they wrote the book. And, you know, the hardest thing in a musical is to have a book that makes sense, you know?
Sure.
And very often the music is great, but sometimes the book is the weakest part. And this was one of the strongest parts. And she wrote that with her brother Herbert. So, I mean, she was a brilliant woman. She was just absolute. And it was funny, just the other day I spoke to her son, David Lahm, who's a composer as well and very busy in the jazz world. He lives here in New York. So it's two generations. Well, actually, I should say three, because her father was a very famous vaudevillian, Lou Field.
Oh, sure. Okay.
He was part of Weber and Fields. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So she was from a very famous family. And she wrote with everybody. I mean, she was a genius. So I'm going to come in and do that show on February 6th. And I'm going to do all of those famous songs that she wrote, along with all of those brilliant writers. And from what I understand, we already have very, very fine attendance, so I'm thrilled.